Hey Fae folk, welcome back to another gimmick focused video. Today we're going to be talking about the best gimmicks from any dolls that aren't Barbie branded. The reason behind that is I started off doing a video on like the best Barbie gimmicks, and then I did kind of like a more negative video on just the worst gimmick dolls from any brand. And now to kind of round out the set and even the scale, because we did like good Barbie and then we did bad Barbie and bad everything else. So now we're going to go ahead and finish everything up by talking about the best non-Barbie gimmick dolls. Very specific. I don't know why I organized things this way, but like here I am, here we are. Hopefully it's going to be a fun time. I did ask you guys here and then also on Instagram for these submissions. So most of these dolls are dolls that you guys suggested that I take a look at. My cat is down here. She's been visiting so much lately. Like if you watch all of my recent videos, she's just like been popping in down here. It's so cute. Anyway, though, yeah, that is what you're going to be doing today. I'll be giving my opinion. You're obviously free to disagree as long as we can all be calm and civil about it. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into these dolls. Alrighty, so we are starting off with what I think is probably the submission that I got the most from y'all. So many of you guys wanted to shout this out, and I totally understand why, and that is the Create a Monster line from Monster High. So this was basically a line, they did a few different iterations of it, and I am going to shout out a few different types of Create a Monster dolls that they did, but this first one that you're seeing is like the most basic format, I guess you would say, where it was a Monster High doll, but it wasn't like a certain character, and they would come with different body parts and different wigs and outfits and like different heads and everything, with the idea being that you could quite literally, as the name implies, create your own monster. So with the example that you have on screen here, this had pieces for a vampire, but then also pieces that were like sea monster themed. So it's like you could create a hybrid if you wanted to, or you could just do the like vampire, or you could just do the sea monster. Although with this one, with some of like the earlier sets, they didn't have two torsos, so like you would have to reuse the same torso. But even so, I do think this is like such a fun idea, such a cute concept to allow like kids, but also just anyone else who might be enjoying these dolls to not only like indulge in Monster High and like the characters that Mattel creates, but also create their own characters. I think that that is super, super fun, but they did not stop there, okay? They did a few different things, as I said, with the Create a Monster line that I think are just so, so cool. One that a couple of y'all submitted and that I also wanted to highlight was the Inner Monster Create Monsters, where they had like transparent torsos, and then you could place different little like emotion tabs into like their skeleton basically. Now that I'm saying it out loud, like it sounds weirder, but it was really cute. And then they also had in their head, like you could press their brain down and their expression would change, like their eyes would shift. I thought it was really, really fun and like another creative way to kind of build on to the already existing Create a Monster line. And then the one that I personally wanted to highlight from the Create a Monster line was like this whole set that came with like this very, honestly, it is very Frankenstein, like this very mechanical little tube that you would set the doll into. It came with a few different bodies and like clothing pieces and all that jazz. But the cool thing with this was that it actually operated with an app, which like, admittedly at the time, I've been told that it didn't work great, but it was something where you would design a face in the app and then it would like print with the machine and like the little markers that you stuck into it onto the doll's face. Like it would draw it for you. That is so cool. Again, I understand that like it didn't work perfectly, but just the concept in general, I think is super fun. And I feel like as a kid playing with this, you would feel so powerful and really and truly like a mad scientist. So honestly, just across the board, props to Create a Monster, because I think all of the iterations were at least fun for somebody. Like I definitely didn't love every single set they came out with, but I do think the ideas in general were really fun and it was just like a really cool concept. So definitely I understand why so many of y'all wanted them to be shouted out in this video, because I also think they deserve that. Next up, there were a couple of Winx dolls that you guys submitted to be included here. So this first one is a Winx doll by Mattel, and it is the Glam Magic Enchantix line. And the thing with these was that their wings had like magnetic things on the back, so you could switch them out, which I do think is pretty fun. Like I feel like that probably makes it a lot easier to like redress these dolls, because you could just pop the wings off entirely, change their clothes, and then pop the wings on. But it is also really cool that that means if you have multiple of these dolls, you could switch their wing styles. So I'm not super familiar with Winx, I do apologize, but I think I know some of the names correctly. So if you have like Bloom and Stella, but you don't like Stella's wings on Stella, you can give her Bloom's wings instead. I do think that that is like a pretty fun concept, especially just, I don't know, there's something, I do love fairies, so maybe I'm just biased, but I do think it's kind of cool to have some customability is, that's not a word. I do like the idea that you would be able to like customize a fairy doll in kind of the most important way. Like the wings are such a defining trait of a fairy that I think the idea of having a doll line where you can kind of switch them in and out and customize them a little bit in that way is really super duper. So thank you for the people who submitted this. I do think this is quite cute. Also, I need to apologize. I am hearing water running. I think it's my dishwasher that's going. I hope that y'all can't hear it, but if you do, I apologize. My dishes were dirty. I had to clean them. But anyway, on to the next one. Then the second little like line of wink stalls that I wanted to shout out today are the Sing and Sparkle wink stalls, which I need to like say a huge thank you. One of you guys not only like responded to me on Instagram submitting these, but also DM'd me and sent me like videos and explanations of everything to do with this gimmick because it is so impressively detailed. So huge shout out to you for sending me that because like it sounds cool reading it, but hearing it and like seeing it and everything is just so next level. So these dolls, they look like kind of just average Winx dolls, but no, there is so much going on here. So they are kind of like singing dolls, but they're so much more than that. If you lift their arm that like is holding the microphone in this picture, they would start to sing a song, which is super cute, but then also you can speed up the tempo of the song by lifting their other arm, which is super satisfying to me as someone who like frequently listens to things in 2 times speed because I'm impatient. I do just think that's like a really cool thing to do that you can like adjust that. But then even more so on their wings are different buttons. So each button corresponds to a different instrument that goes along with the song. And you can therefore kind of like have this doll that is not only just a basic singing doll who will play a tune, but also it's kind of like a soundboard where you can decide that you want to have her singing with just one instrument or singing a cappella, or you want no like singing at all and you just want to hear the instrumentals. And I think that is so fun that again, not only is this like, oh cool, I'm hearing this song, but it also is super interactive in the way that it can like let you play along with the song and change things about the song. Or if you've got multiple of these, you could like do a bunch of different stuff. I just think that is so cool and so fun and really quite impressive. Like I think the ingenuity is really cool there that they didn't just stop at being like, oh yeah, let's make music dolls. It's like, no, let's make these really and truly interactive music dolls where people who are like enjoying them can also express their own creativity by only using certain parts or like combining different parts. I think that is super rad. So I'm really glad that I know about these dolls now. I had no idea that they even existed before it was brought to my attention for this video. And I just think that is so fun, so neat. So again, thank you to the person who submitted these. Because yeah, I'm really glad I was able to talk about them a little bit. They're super cool. Next up was another one that was very commonly submitted, and that is the Rainbow High Color and Create dolls. Specifically, I have shown here the Watercolor and Create because I got a few more submissions that like specifically were talking about this one versus the first lineup with the markers. This one has a die instead, so it's more of like almost like a writ die situation. But so many of y'all were saying that these dolls are great bases for customizers, which I do totally get. Like I haven't purchased any of them just because I don't know, there's a couple that I do think would make good base dolls for like customs that I would like to do eventually in the future, adding on to my ever-growing list of projects that I have not worked on. But yeah, I just thought this was like kind of interesting because while I see it and I'm like, yes, I totally agree, good base dolls for people to customize, I didn't realize how beloved they were. Like it seems like so many of y'all really do like these. And again, especially the watercolor ones, I feel like probably because the markers themselves are like, they're not going to be the highest quality markers, right? Whereas it seems like the dye might be a little bit better of like a quality or more similar to like a proper writ dye. I'm not trying to say like they are exactly comparable because again, I don't have any personal experience with this, but I do think that that is like a really fun, and I'm glad that so many people are finding joy in these because I do like the idea of really any doll that encourages creativity. I feel like that's such an important thing to foster in kids. Like I'm talking about kids because like that's the targeted demographic, but also adults. I love the idea of adult collectors getting these dolls and like experimenting. Maybe that's like the first time that someone might feel like they can do any sort of customizing on a doll, because it does feel kind of daunting when you like spend your money on a doll to then change something about it or like recolor it or reroute it or repaint the face or whatever like that. Like I can understand why that feels really daunting. So I feel like this might be a really good entry point for a lot of people to experiment with customizing. I don't know. As an artistic person, I'm always going to be a fan of dolls that incorporate art aspects because I think that is such a wonderful thing to foster in people. So I totally agree with these. Good on y'all for shouting them out. They're not always like the prettiest fashions, not necessarily always the highest quality. I know like the color and create ones like here with the watercolor don't have the wrist articulation, but I do still think there's a lot of good to be said about these dolls. So I hear you. I get it. Okay, this one is funny. So this is Sky Dancers, which I did not even know was still a thing that you could purchase. Like I remember hearing about these when I was much younger, and then they just kind of faded out of my consciousness. Like I didn't know this was still a thing. But yes, Sky Dancers. I feel like these are quite infamous because I don't know if it was because I was young. I don't know. I don't know if it was like a recall proper, if it was just like a safety issue. But like older versions of the Sky Dancers did have some safety concerns where the whole gimmick with this is that you like pull a cord or something and they fly off and like spin around, and it's almost like the like if you're in an area that has like the trees with the helicopters, it's kind of like that. And I do think it's like a really fun gimmick, but there were some safety issues, then like going into light fixtures or hitting people in the face or going into like fireplaces and starting fires. So that's kind of why I was surprised that this is still a thing. And also I thought it was absolutely hilarious that one of y'all submitted this because like I agree. I do think this is fun. Like I never owned one of these as a kid, but I'm sure I would have absolutely loved it. Maybe more of like an outside toy just so you don't break anything inside, but I would have lost it to like be launching my doll and watch her fly. Like I feel like that does feel so fun, but it was just super comical to me because I think it was in the premiere, not in the comments, but in the premiere of my video on the worst doll gimmicks, some of y'all brought up that Sky Dancers should have been in that video because of like the more dangerous aspect of some of their earlier iterations. So it's so funny to see how like different people's minds think differently. Some people are like, oh yeah, Sky Dancers are the worst. Other people are like, no, Sky Dancers are some of the best. It's such a vibe. But like I do think that this is kind of fun. I can see the safety concerns, but like if you do it carefully, I feel like this would absolutely go so hard to play with. This was another one that I was so genuinely surprised to see, and it wasn't just one of y'all. Like several of you guys brought up the Magic Mixies Pixlings for the unboxing gimmick, and I was super surprised because I feel like the unboxing gimmick is the thing that I hear people hate the most about the Magic Mixies Pixlings. So really this is the Sky Dancers all over, where some people hate it and some people love it. And again, I think it's so beautiful how different people have different opinions. I know with like the Pixlings, there is like an issue of it's not the most environmentally friendly. Like there is a lot of waste because of the unboxing gimmick. It also is kind of fun. Like I'm going to be honest, I do kind of like the unboxing gimmick. When I first got my first Pixling, I genuinely was like, okay, I'm going to do the unboxing for this video. Like I'm going to do the whole gimmick and everything. And then I'm probably never going to do it for any future one because I'm going to hate it. And I've done it for every single Pixling doll that I've unboxed because listen, it's kind of fun, especially the new ones where like the water sparkles. It's kind of fun. I kind of like it. I understand the environmental concerns. Like I'm not trying to dismiss that, but also it is kind of fun. And so it was just super cool to see some of you guys also being like, yes, I do like it. I know it's unpopular, or at least it feels like maybe I'm just in the wrong spaces, but it feels like a lot of people, so many more people like hate the packaging, but some of y'all like it. And I'm here for you. I do think it would be nice if we could find like a happy middle ground where maybe like there was a little bit less waste involved, but like we still got some sort of fun, sparkly unboxing. Maybe something will come up. We'll see. But yeah, shout out to the Pixlings. I'm also biased just because I absolutely adore these dolls. So of course they were going to make the list. This one, I love this so much. I'm so glad some of y'all brought this up. Betty Spaghetti. This is an older doll brand. This was one that I had several of these dolls as a child, and I loved them so much. The gimmick was like the entire doll, so each individual piece does like pop apart. So these were very much honestly like Create-A-Monsters in some capacity, where you could completely build new dolls and new characters because the head would pop off, the arms would pop off, the hands would pop off. Each piece of like clothing, it wasn't fabric clothing. I mean, you can see from the picture, it's plastic. So like the entire shirt was molded together, but you could pop the torso off of the skirt, off of the legs, off of the shoes. So like in a sense, like a little horrific because you would just have body parts lying around. But it was really, really cool to have that extreme like level of customization capability to be able to create brand new characters, to not only switch the outfits, but like switch so much about them. It was so fun. I also, oh my God, I loved the hair on these things. Like it's very, it's obviously plastic, but they had like molded on hair for like shorter hairstyles and then like for bangs and stuff like you're seeing on here. But then a lot of the time they would have ponytails or pigtails that had like these little plastic tendrils that were like little plastic spaghetti noodles. And the texture of those, I will never forget. It has been years since I've held a Betty spaghetti in my hands. And honestly, I kind of want one just to like have the experience again. Actually, I want a cat. There was a cat. Of course I want the cat. There was a Betty spaghetti cat though that had like a ponytail that was the same texture. So you got the texture, but also it was a cat. I would love to own that again. Or yeah, like just one Betty spaghetti just for old time's sake. The texture really and truly was like nothing else. Now in like my adult age and like the world that we live in, I'm like, this is kind of like a fidget toy essentially. Back then I did not have that name for it, but I knew that I loved the texture of the hair. I loved running my like little fingers along it. If we're being honest, I loved chewing on that shit. I know I shouldn't have, like I know. It's like the Polly Pocket clothes. I know, but I still did it and I still loved it. And I think of Betty Spaghetti honestly quite often, and I always think of them so fondly. So I was so happy that some of y'all also remembered this old doll brand and also loved it as much as I did. Because like I genuinely hold so much love in my heart for these silly, goofy little dolls. They're not the most aesthetically pleasing, but there's just something so nostalgic and so cute about them. So like mad props to Betty Spaghetti. This was another one that I got a couple of times, and honestly, I was pretty surprised about that. These are the Style Bay dolls. So these are a fairly recent doll line that I don't think is being continued. We haven't heard anything about them for a while, but like also they are so recent that that might not mean anything. I might just be like talking up my ass here. But they essentially are like a combination of a fashion doll and a paper doll, with the idea being that they have these completely flat bodies and they come with stickers that you can like place on to dress the doll, and then you can take them off because of what their body is made of. It's supposed to be like more reusable with the stickers, but then they have like a regular doll head on them, so they've got rooted hair that you can brush, with basically the concept being like combining the hair play aspect of a more traditional fashion doll with the like dressing mechanisms, I guess you would say, of a paper doll, of course, except it's stickers rather than like a pure paper doll. These are definitely not for me. I talked about these a while ago in some dolls I don't want video, just because I do think that they look a little uncanny, a little bit uncomfortable for me personally with like the 3D head on the 2D body. But I do think that the designs for the fashions are honestly really, really cute. I would love to see some of these clothes in like fabric on proper fashion dolls, because I do think that some of the styles are really, really precious, and I can absolutely understand, like even as someone who doesn't personally like them, I can see why people do, because if you are a big hair play person but you aren't really into fashion like and dressing dolls and all of that, that could be super fun for you. And then like I do like the paper doll aspect. Like I do think that paper dolls are kind of fun. For me, I kind of view them more as almost like one use things, just because whenever I had a paper doll I would plop the outfit on there and that was it. But like I can see the appeal. I personally don't want any of these. Like I didn't buy any of these, but I do feel like for a certain demographic they could be really, really fun. So like I get it. I low-key like hope that these aren't actually canceled, just because they are so different. Again, like it's not something I would put my money into, but I do feel like they are really unique, and I feel like they probably appeal to like a certain customer base very deeply. So like hopefully we get to see at least one more run for these gals. I feel like they deserve at least a little bit more. Okay, this one's funny because I completely agree, but also I low-key made a video shitting on this doll. I stand by it, okay? So this was the Alice collector doll from Mattel, and most of my complaints really were like the price versus the quality that it seemed like you got. A big thing for me was like they don't have wrist articulation on this Alice doll, which I felt like for the price tag was just a little bit crazy. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about the Gimmick, which, to be fair, I think this is like, gimmick is so hard to define. Like, what's the line between a gimmick and just like a design element? I don't know. I feel like this might be towing the line, but I do agree that it is super cool. So I wanted to include it anyway. And that is that Alice comes with this doll. I think it's the White Rabbit's house. Please correct me if I'm wrong. but I'm pretty sure it's the White Rabbit's house. And so she's supposed to be emulating the scene where she is like drinking and eating like the potions and everything, and she grows really big and is like way too big for the house. So the house that she comes with, you can like put the little miniature pieces in it, and it can just be a little play piece, just like a tiny little miniature, or you can take the different pieces out and you can put it onto Alice's body as you're seeing in the image here. So she's like looking out the window and her arms are poking out the sides. And I'm gonna be honest, I still think this doll was like really expensive. I still have my gripes about her, but this is really smart and really cool. Again, I'm not 100% sure how gimmicky some people might consider this to be, but I think this is a really fun design element. I think this is a really interesting scene that they tried to recreate. And I'm so glad that they did it in a practical way instead of it just being like vaguely referential. I think this is really, really fun. So I again, I kind of feel like a hypocrite because I wasn't a fan of this doll, but I do think this is a really cool gimmick if you want to call it a gimmick. I think it's kind of a vibe. Ooh, hard agree on this one. So this is from Gen 1 of Monster High, Laguna Blue with her hydration station. This was part of the Dead Tired line, but Laguna didn't come with like just the doll. She had her whole, again, hydration station, which basically the concept was that like she gets in and she goes to bed, and instead of sleeping in a normal bed, she's sleeping in like this watery tube to keep her nice and hydrated through the night. And the gimmick with this was that the front panel was like 2 layers of plastic, and you would pour water into it, and then once you put the batteries in and turned it on, it would blow bubbles up into the water and it would light up. And it is super cool. I actually did used to have this. I ended up getting rid of it just because I liked the idea of the hydration station, but I'm not really a pajamas dolls person, and I honestly didn't turn it on enough for me to be like, okay, this justifies taking up space in my collection. I still think it's super cool though. Like again, it's kind of like the Alice one. Like I didn't like it enough to keep it, but I still do value the gimmick. Like I can look at it and be like, okay, I don't need to own this, but I still think it's really cool. It's super fun. It looks really, really pretty when you like actually see it in action. So absolute vibe. Thank you to whoever submitted this one because this is so real. She's a great doll. Okay, I have actually so much to say about this one. So this is the Bratz Head Games line. They had like a few different things with this where you could get sets like this, where it's the doll with different heads, or you could buy just like the heads. I think pretty obviously the gimmick here is that you can switch the head on the doll, so you can like give them immediately different colored hair, different makeup, everything, like a very, very quick makeover there. And I think this is an excellent way to do this gimmick. Semi-recently, I mean, I don't even know what you would consider recently. I don't even remember when these dolls came out. But the LOL Tweens did something very, very similar where they released dolls that came with 2 heads, and then they had like extra heads that you could buy and you could swap them out. And my complaint with that was that because they were so like hyper themed and hyper stylized, I felt like it looked kind of ridiculous. Like all of these sets with like the heads, to me, it felt like there was a head that was very clearly supposed to go on the LOL body. And then the other one was just like extra, and you could swap it on, but it would look super weird if you did. If you disagreed, that's totally fine. But that was just kind of my perception. Was it felt like they designed a doll. Hi, baby. I know you have a lot to say about this too. It felt like with LOL, the tweens, they like designed a doll and then they designed like just a head, and we're like, oh, whatever. I guess we can package them together. And it didn't feel cohesive and like it worked. This, I think, is so different, and it's so interesting because I think it plays into the strength of Bratz so perfectly. With Bratz, I do think that they're a very like unique doll line in the sense that outside of specifically themed lines, they're very just normal dolls realistically. Like, okay, maybe you're not always wearing, like red vinyl pants, but they have their individual styles, but they're all clothing pieces that I could see someone wearing in real life. And they're not really super, super thematic. Again, like there's styles, but not necessarily intense themes. With like Rainbow High, you've got dolls that are all in monochrome, or with Monster High, it's obviously like, okay, here's a vampire character, here's the Frankenstein character. A lot of other doll lines are very thematic in that way, whereas Bratz feel like they're just wearing clothes. Like they just are girls wearing cute clothes. And so I feel like I am getting to a point with this. I feel like I'm going on a couple different tangents. But to bring it back to the heads games, I think the reason that this works for me, and I think this set is genuinely so cool, whereas I hated the LOL dolls when they did this, is because the clothes are just so every day. Like all the outfits that this comes with is just like, yeah, like this is just a girl who has like these pieces in her closet, and they're very normal pieces. They're very mix and matchable. And most importantly, for the head swapping gimmick, you could put any of these heads with any of these pieces of clothing and it would look fine. Like I said with the LOL dolls, it felt like, okay, here's the head that is supposed to go here. Here's a random extra head. You could put any of these heads on this brat's body in any of the outfit pieces that she comes with, and I would believe you that that was like just how she came, right? Like they just feel so much more natural and so much more cohesive instead of it being like this hyper themed thing where then it feels weird. I love me a good theme. Don't get me wrong. I mean, most of my collection is Monster High. I love a good theme. But for a head swapping gimmick, I just think Bratz is the perfect brand to do this because they are not just swappable in a gimmick sense. It's not just like, haha, here's extra heads, here you go. It feels so real and it feels so much like genuinely having, in this case, with this set that I'm showing on screen, 4 dolls in one. I think this is so smart. Like other brands have done this before, the head swapping gimmick. It's obviously not new or like completely unique to Bratz, but I would argue that at least out of the ones that I've seen, Bratz has by far done it the best just because of the nature of how these dolls are designed. I feel so strongly about this. I've been talking about this for a long time, so I am sorry, but I just genuinely think this is cool. And I have never seen another head swap gimmick doll aside from like ones like Create a Monster, where I feel like that is a little bit different because it's not just the head, it's like the entire monster, right? But purely a head swap gimmick, I have never seen another brand do it where I've been like, I want this. Whereas if I wasn't horrified to know what this would cost on the secondhand Bratz market, I would be popping on eBay and buying this right now because I think it is genuinely so fun. So rant over. I love these. On to the next one. Technically also Bratz, but like slight spinoff. So this is the Bratzilla's. Why did I say that so confidently? And then I didn't have the name. Hold on. How am I forgetting this? Midnight Beach. That's such an easy name. How did that escape me for so long? My goodness, I am sorry. So the Bratz Midnight Beach line. This one I think is like kind of an amalgamation for a couple of different submissions because a lot of you guys just said glow in the dark dolls in general, which I get. A good glow in the dark doll, super, super fun to see stuff like glowing. I get it. But the Bratzillas, I feel like, are kind of the ultimate version of that almost for the Midnight Beach line because with these, the entire doll glowed. Like that was the gimmick. It wasn't just like, oh, a piece of the hair or like some of the clothing or whatever. It was the entire doll's body glows in the dark. And I agree. I think that's really, really sick. One of you guys submitted this specifically. And then, like I said, a bunch of you guys just said glow in the dark stuff in general. These are really, really fun. Like, I don't love a lot of the designs for like the clothing pieces, just because a lot of them I do think are kind of weird. This one I'm showing you is the mermaid, which obviously is my favorite because I love mermaids. But in general, I do agree that the idea of having an entire doll that glows in the dark is kind of like the ultimate version of a glow in the dark gimmick, and it is just super, super fun. So shout out to everyone who also loves glow in the dark stuff. I hear you. I see you. Bratzillas are maybe for you. This next one, I was so glad that one of you brought it up because I was going to put it in the video whether or not anybody said that they agreed that it was really cool. So this is What's Her Face, which was a doll brand that I don't know like exactly when it ran. I remember seeing the commercials when I was a kid. So this is kind of another nostalgia filled one for me, even though I never actually owned these dolls. But the gimmick with these dolls was that their face was completely blank and you could either draw or stamp on the face yourself. So they would come with markers and then stamps. So like you could, again, you could draw if you just like wanted to freehand it. That was totally chill. Or you could use the stamps for like the eye shape. You could color the marker on it and then stamp it onto her face and suddenly she's got eyeballs and a mouth and everything like that. This is so, so fun. A lot of the ones I'm talking about now that I'm realizing it, and a lot of the ones you guys submitted are dolls that have some level of like customization capabilities, like the Winx where you can switch the wings out, or the Betty Spaghetti or the Create a Monster. Like there's so many dolls that I'm featuring in this video and that y'all submitted that are like creative dolls. I love that for us. I love that we're on the same page here. But yeah, the What's Her Face, like it can be seen as creepy and uncanny. I get it. Like if you look at this and you're like, that's absolutely freaky. I hear you and I understand you. And it also was like, from what I've heard from people who have had these dolls, difficult to stamp them properly, to get like the eyes even or to not smudge it or anything like that. But just in general, like I remember wanting this as a kid. I never had it, but like I remember wanting it because I thought it was so cool. The idea that you could like make your own face for the doll, and then you could of course like wipe it off and redo it. It just seems like a really fun thing. I can see where it would be uncanny and like a little bit odd, but it is super fun, and I am a little bit nostalgia blind with this one. So again, I'm so glad one of y'all brought it up because this is one that came to mind when I like conceptualized this video. I just think it's really nifty, even if it is a little weird. This one I almost didn't include just because it's kind of more the playset doing the gimmick, but also it's Polly Pocket, and I feel like so much of Polly Pocket was playsets anyway. I don't know. We're here, so I'm including it. The Quick Click Polly Pocket. Specifically, I wanted to talk about the House of Style because, like, the whole thing with this was that it was a type of, like, the slightly larger Polly Pockets that had magnetic clothing, so it would, like, click into place. Because they did a few different versions of, like, clothing for Polly Pocket. Like, my favorite were the rubbery ones, as I mentioned before, because I would chew on them. But this one was more of a magnetic one. But the really, really cool thing about this playset specifically is that if you like put her in the elevator, you could load up an outfit into the elevator and then lift her up, and it would put on the outfit as the Polly Pocket goes up. So then it would like magically kind of dress her. And I just think that's really cute. I think it's a fun idea. It's like a relatively simple gimmick, and I feel like it's something that kids playing with it would be able to fairly easily do. Like it's not super hard necessarily to just like pop an outfit into place and then pull a lever, right? Like it's something that it feels like it's super fun. It would feel so magical to watch it happen, but it's not like it requires a lot of like dexterity, like the what's her face, like to try to get them even and everything like that. I just think this is wholesome and fun. Like I said, it was a whole line. Like they had a whole set of different things. Like there were different play sets and just like fashions and everything like that that were surrounded by this like magnetized gimmick. But I think this one is probably the coolest in my opinion. And I just think it's like kind of a vibe. I like the idea of just boop, there you go, outfit change. It's so fun. Just two more to go. So this next one is the Fidgy Friends line of dolls, which if I'm not mistaken, they're still like around. Like they still are available to purchase. I think I've seen them in Walmart like fairly recently. I know they've had a couple of lines that have come out, so it seems like they might be doing okay, which is dandy. These are dolls, I will say totally up front, I would never buy these for myself just because personally I don't really like the aesthetics of them, but I love the concept and I'm so glad that other people are enjoying these dolls because I genuinely think it's so cool. The whole purpose of these dolls is that they double as dolls, but also as like fidget toys. So each doll has different gimmicks, looking like left to right here, we have the fairy doll that's got like the pop wings, and then also she's got like a squishy skirt. Then we have like the mermaid doll that has like glitter filled fins, but also a sequin like flip tail, one of those that like changes color depending on how you flip the sequins. We've got more squish on the like purple mermaid doll, and then there's like a more foamy squish skirt on the last doll, and kind of that like almost like the Betty Spaghetti, although I think this is a little bit softer where it's like plastic stringy hair. And the whole point again is that these are dolls that not only serve as dolls that you can like play pretend with or like whatever and can be companions, but they also are the built-in fidget toys. And I do think that is so fun as someone who very much is a fidgeter myself. Again, like I wouldn't want these dolls just because they're not for me aesthetically, but I love that concept of building in the fidget toys for kids. I feel like this is just such a cute thing to have, and there's definitely such a market for it. I really hope they get to continue producing dolls, even though like I doubt I will ever own one, but I do think there are so many kids who could benefit from this and who would really enjoy it, and honestly so many adults who could benefit from it, enjoy it as well. I think this is super. I think this is such a good idea for a doll line, so like 10 out of 10 had to be on here. And then this last edition here, I don't even know how I found this. Like I cannot for the life of me remember what I searched or what website I was even on, but I was just like perusing dolls online and saw this and was like, perfect end to this gimmick video because this is so interesting. So these are Candy Locks dolls. They are extremely small. I think they're like 3 inches tall. Like they are very tiny dolls. Obviously they have pretty limited articulation, as you can see from the picture here. It looks like it might just be like a little bit of the shoulders and then kind of like a waist articulation situation. The clothing is all molded on. The whole point of these dolls is the hair, and I think this is so cool. The texture of it, I don't know exactly what it's made of. I'm like double checking real quick. Excuse me, I have hiccups again. I always get hiccups down here. Yeah, I don't think the description, I screenshotted the description so I knew what I was doing. But I don't think it says what it's made of. So it looks like it's almost like a yarn sort of texture, like a like brushed out yarn. But they have, it says 15 inches of hair, and then they have hair accessories. And because of the texture of the hair, it's not like a nylon or a polypropylene or saran like typical fashion doll hair. It is much more almost moldable. Like it's something kind of between hair and like a sculpture material. So it's super, super easy for anyone to like shape the hair how you want it to, or it's easier to braid and get it to stay in place because it kind of like almost locks into itself, but then you can, unbraid it and like take it apart. And I just think that is so lovely for anyone who just might like the texture, might like the feeling of this hair, but also I feel like so many dolls, part of the reason why people love dolls so much is that hair play aspect. That's why not as many dolls end up getting shorter hair, even though like it would be cheaper for companies to produce dolls with shorter hair, technically speaking. Like it might be better for them on the back end. But longer hair dolls do tend to sell well because people like to play with the hair. They like to be able to style it. And that's, adult collectors or kids liking to have like dolls with super long hair so that they can mess with it. But a lot of the like more traditional fashion doll hair types can be difficult, or like getting the rubber bands on the hair to kind of secure it and that sort of thing. Whether you might just be like young, like if it's like a kid playing with it, they might not have like that developed dexterity yet. Or if you're someone like me whose hands just don't work quite right sometimes. So like sometimes my hands are super shaky, and sometimes I can braid doll hair and it's fine. And sometimes I try to braid doll hair and then it hurts really badly because I'm gripping to like hold on to the silky strands and it's like harder. So I love the idea of these dolls because I feel like they, because of the texture of the hair, are like kind of more accessible for people to be able to enjoy that hair play aspect, but it's not that like layer of almost difficulty that regular doll hair sometimes can bring. I feel like that might sound weird, like if you're not someone who has struggled with hair, like if you're just like extremely skilled at doing doll hair, you might be like, what do you mean? And that's a vibe for you, like kudos. But it can be hard to work with, and so I think this is super, super cool, again, for so many different like ages and regions reasons, because I feel like little kids would really love to play with this. The texture, it looks like it would be extremely soft, but then again, if like you are an adult, like it could be something that you could fidget with or that you could play with and enjoy and kind of like get that feeling of doing doll hair without it having to be kind of a more difficult process or a more intricate process. I just think this is a total vibe. I don't know that I would ever get one because like the faces low-key kind of creep me out. But I do think that the hair is super fun, and this was such good timing for me to randomly stumble across these, so I'm so glad that I know that they exist. I hope they continue, because like many dolls that I've talked about on this list, oddly enough, I might not want one personally, but I love that this exists, and I think it's really interesting and unique, so like, such a vibe. But yes, guys, that is finally going to be it for today. I feel like I've been talking for forever. Like, I don't feel like I covered as many dolls as I did in my other couple of gimmick videos, but I feel like I've been talking for quite some time. So hopefully this was fun for y'all. As with the other videos, I would love to hear if you have any thoughts on the dolls that we discussed today, or also just any other dolls that this video made you think of, any other gimmick dolls that you find really, really appealing. I would love to hear about them. I won't make another video. I feel like I'm pretty like gimmicked out, at least for now. I think I've talked about gimmicks enough for, again, at least the present moment. Who can say what will happen in the future? But I think for now I'm chill with my little trio of videos, but I would still love to hear any other like thoughts, or like I said, any other dolls that come to mind. So feel free to leave those in the comments down below. But yes, I hope you were able to enjoy the video today, guys. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day or your night, wherever it might be, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye, guys.